Today I will be taking a look at a new PvE game mode for War Thunder Ground Forces. For those not aware, PvE stands for Player versus Environment, so essentially you are fighting bots rather than other players. Now we already have Arcade Assault for both air and ground forces, although I am of the opinion that this game mode gets stale very quickly due to its quite repetitive nature. This new game mode, however, is something that I see as a suitable replacement or just another PvE option for players with a slightly more interesting match progression that I would actually compare to some of the PvE missions in the game Crossout. In the currently running gameplay test, the options for playing this game mode are quite limited, although players do have a few versions that they could decide to try. Now each one has the same general gameplay layout, although they have different units used for the bot side and for the player side. Firstly, there are a pair of Eastern Front missions, the first needing players to have German Tier 2 or above ground vehicles to use the Panzer IIIF on Poland. The second of these Eastern Front missions needs players to have Russian Tier 4 or above ground vehicles to then use the T-34-57 on the map Fire Arc. The third and final version of the game mode currently available to players is for those that own American Tier 5 or above ground vehicles, and will see the players using the M48A1 on the map Sinai. This is the version of the game mode that I will be playing during this video. So the game mode as a whole has 3 objectives in each match, which are completed one after the other. You start the match by having to capture a zone which is defended by a few tanks and some stationary anti-tank guns. Once this has been completed, your team will then be instructed to clear the nearby area of enemy units, which will again consist of anti-tank guns and tanks. After that objective is complete, you will have to move to and protect a friendly capture point from attacking enemy tanks, and after all of the objectives are completed, you will win the game. So to give a slightly better demonstration of how this game mode works, let's take a look at a match. Now these games can last a fair while, so I have sped up less important elements of this gameplay, but I do want to show the whole gameplay progression from the start to the end. So starting off on Sinai with the M48, we firstly have to capture a capture point, which is protected by stationary anti-tank weapons and tanks. Now in this slightly higher tier match version, the more modern anti-tank stationary weapons, the SPG-9s, the crew members on them are completely exposed, so you can easily just mow them down, and quite easily we took that point, all of our teams still alive, and that was the first part of the game completed. Our next task is to search and destroy any remaining enemy vehicles in the nearby area. I started off by taking out another stationary anti-tank weapon, before slowly pushing up towards the town area, taking out yet another anti-tank weapon, which, as said, are quite easy to kill in this slightly higher tier version of the game mode, before then engaging a few enemy tanks in the town. Now moving on, there are quite a few of them. In this version at least, there's a few T-55s sitting in the town, and then you have some T-62s and such pushing up from the other side. Moving in though, there is one of the T-62s who pushed up, already been disabled by the looks of it, so just quickly finish him off before pushing up to some more of the tanks that were just already here in the town. Now this part of the game it can be tricky to do. I died quite a few times in games in this early part, in this sort of second stage, so to speak. These tanks do have decent accuracy for the most part. They seem to be the same bots that are already used in the PvE Arcade Assault. They seem to have the same sort of accuracy, so they can actually snipe you all the way from like the other side. I've seen some clips of people who have just finished the first stage, they captured the town, and they were sniped from essentially the other side of the map by these, so you do certainly need to be careful, and definitely it is worth sticking to cover. But at this point we've essentially finished the second stage. There's one tank left who I'm about to kill, and we have eliminated all of the other tanks in the area and all of the stationary anti-tank weapons. So now with the completion of stage 2, we're going to move on to the third and final stage in this game mode, which is where we get given a friendly capture point that we have to protect against invading enemy vehicles. So what we're basically given is about 60 seconds to get to positions, defensive positions, near or just around this friendly capture point, and then the enemy vehicles will spawn in and come along. Now on this map it's quite good because there are these rocks here, and the enemy vehicles spawn on the other side. They're going to come around these rocks, so we can just sit here and wait for them to drive in front of us, and it's actually a really good position. Now I can't really say how the lower tier versions of this game mode work in this part. I only played one game of each of the lower ones, and I didn't get to this stage in those games, so I have only experienced the third stage in the top tier version of the game mode. Nonetheless though, it's quite good, quite easy. I would say that the second stage is the more difficult one, but in the third stage really what you're dealing with is just tanks driving out in front of you to be shot, which basically means that if you find good positions in that sort of minute that you have to get into your defensive positions, you should have no issue finishing the game as long as you have enough ammunition to kill all of the bots that are coming towards you. So to summarize, the idea for this game mode is certainly more interesting than Assault, which as said is quite repetitive. However, the execution isn't perfect, and there are one or two things that I personally feel could be improved before this game mode is permanently added. Firstly, the shooting accuracy of the bots is a bit too good in my opinion. This was especially noticeable during the second phase of most of the missions, where you would find yourself quickly knocked out by multiple bot vehicles all focusing you, even from quite long range. Now, for a game mode like Assault, this wouldn't be a major issue, as you can respawn and usually have a reasonably sized team who are all fighting back towards the bots. But in this mode, where teams are usually around 4 people or less if players have already died, and you only have one spawn, this level of bot accuracy does seem a bit high in my opinion. Secondly, the spotting system could be slightly improved. I personally don't play arcade tanks all that much, so I'm not sure how the spotting system works in a normal arcade tank game, but I have been killed in this mode once or twice already by targets that simply didn't get spotted, even with friendly vehicles quite close to them. This also leads into a slight render range issue that I noticed, where some of the troops that were manning the enemy anti-tank guns don't seem to render past a certain range, making those units look as though they've already been knocked out, even though in fact they are perfectly functional. Anyways though, that's everything from me for this new PvE game mode. I certainly do find this quite interesting, and I do already think that this is a more promising game mode than Assault as far as PvE options, as the sort of gameplay flow is just a lot more interesting than Assault, which, as mentioned, is a very repetitive game mode. Nonetheless though, I do feel it seems to be quite good, and I do look forward to seeing how the mode is improved before its final release. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.